Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This biggest show is about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about SurrealEstate Season 2, Episode 7. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we are dealing with this interesting situation. Basically, there was this guy when he was a kid. His name is Morris. He was haunted by this voice underneath his bed that was like, every time your fingers or your toes like go off the mattress, I'm gonna eat them, I'm gonna devour them, and it scared the crap out of him. Even the voice, it definitely feels like it's meant to be a little Pennywise, specifically Bill Skarsgård Pennywise. It just kind of sounds like it's kind of going for that. But to be fair, it's like I've not seen the original It like miniseries movie in like years, so I don't really remember. I remember being scared as hell from Tim Curry's version, but I'm like, I don't. Once again, it's kind of that recency thing where it's just like, obviously, I've seen them, the more recent, the Andy Muschietti, It's more recently. I still need to watch part 2, but I've seen part 1 like a couple years ago, so that's why I'm like, it's a lot clearer in my head, like Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise. But either way. But yeah, like, because of that, and especially when you had that element of, here he is, like, 48 years later coming back as an adult, which, or if that ends up being what is part of the It story of the kids coming back as adults to face Pennywise. So it's interesting, the parallels. It feels like it's meant to be a little bit of an homage to that in some regard. I'm sure if you probably go back, a lot of these stories are probably homages to a lot of, like, supernatural horror stuff. Like, probably some of them kind of, it's in the same vein. It's like like paying homage to some Stephen King or just some classic horror stuff in general. But this one definitely gave me It vibes. But either way, but it's actually really sad because Morris grew up to be kind of like a criminal. Like this, like his mom died last year. He got out of prison like a few weeks ago or something like that. And now he's trying to sell his mom's house and he wants to deal with this. I mean, jumping through it a little bit, like kind of staying with Morris really quickly. It's interesting because this is one of 3 things he wants to do, because it turns out he has a brain tumor and he's checking things off the list. He's got, he wants to sell his mom's house, their house, and also deal with this thing. And he wants to go see his daughter, who he hasn't seen since he got out of prison. Just a lot of the last things he wants to do before he ultimately ends up dying. He's got his sordid history. Like, it's just that thing of that trauma he carried with him as a kid, because it was, no matter how scared he was, he couldn't really tell his mom anything about it, especially because for him, it's like, we did a lot to get away from my dad. He's like, we barely got out alive. So it feels like his dad was abusive and his mom did everything she could to buy this house. And even he loved the house except for this element. And I think for him, it was something that followed him, and he just had like a troubled history, in and out of trouble. And obviously ended up in jail. I mean, he did his time, but still. And so he comes off kind of like a douche and like such a scary, intimidating guy, but understandable. Like, he got a harder edge to him because he went to prison, but also because of just like the what he's carried with him his entire life. That fear there made him become the person he became. Like, he became, in his mind, he's like, if it wasn't for that voice, I wouldn't become a bully. I disappointed myself, but also I disappointed my mom, which is like so sad that he didn't get this closure, but while his mom was still alive. It's kind of sad that he didn't get it until after, like, it's like, once again, she died last year, so I mean, who knows, like, just because it was last year doesn't mean it could have just been like, depending on the time frame of when the story's taking place, it could have been like months ago or something like that. But it's like, it's actually really sad element to it, especially when we get the resolution to it, that the creature, it's like, it wasn't trying to scare him, because even August was like, yeah, I've looked at this thing, like, despite what it's saying, like, it's not actually trying to kill him. It doesn't mean him any harm. In fact, this thing wanted to make him stronger. Like, I guess it's an entity that exists for the purposes of, oh, I'm trying to tell you, like, you're scared. I wanted to, like, scare you, but enough that you would be brave that no one would ever scare you. But I didn't realize what I had done to you. Like, I didn't realize, like, I made you into the hardened person. It was meant to make it so that you would never feel scared ever in your life, to toughen you up. But it kind of, this tough love approach, this scared love approach did not work. And in fact, made him the hardened person he is. And even the creature's like, I'm sorry, I failed you. Like, that's why I'm still around. Like, I wasn't trying to actually scare you. Like, don't hurt yourself. The moment he was like, I'm going to deal with you, but I'm also going to kill myself in the process. Like, don't do that. I don't want you to hurt yourself. I just wanted to toughen you up so you never have to be afraid. Like, I guess maybe, I mean, who knows what this creature could have been? Maybe this creature was in a similar boat, like when I was what I was before. Maybe I'm this entity. I've always existed in this capacity. Maybe, God, there's so many different comparisons. Like, it almost feels like, how like in Supernatural, obviously there's the whole imaginary friends element. I mean, there's Supernatural. There's also like the show Happy, which revolve around happy. Imaginary friends and the roles they play. Like, what if that's what, like, either not necessarily that he's an imaginary friend, but what if he is in an existence like that, or was this thing human at one point in time and was kind of similar to Morris, which was scared all the time, and now your job as an entity is like, oh, I found a kid who's my way of kind of moving on is I want to make sure this kid's okay. And there was some closure at the end of it all. Like, Morris puts his hand out and was like, is this thing trying to trick him? And then their hands clasped together. I was like, there's something beautiful and cathartic about that. Because him kind of letting go. Because for him, it's like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have turned into the person I did. And the thing kind of was like, right, I was trying to make it so you never had to be scared of anything or anyone your entire life, but that backfired and made him into this person. And even he's blaming himself. It's like, if I had faced you all those years ago, who knows what my life could have been. And it's just like, it's really sad when you like contextualize that entire story. It's actually really depressing, but also what that means for Luke's story too, because Luke he ends up talking to Morris about like, right, if you don't deal with stuff, it doesn't go away. That is your unfinished business until you tackle it. He knows complicated family situations, fathers, mothers, and Phil finally tracked down his mom again and just like, here's her name, here's her address, but Luke didn't want to deal with it at the time. But it's like, right, this is something that's been there. It's been a part of your life since your childhood, and it's like, if you don't face it now, it will always be your unfinished business. So whether the next episode revolves around that or what, but we'll have to wait and see. But there is kind of a nice resolution in regards of like I said, Morris's story is sad, but at least he's going to Nevada to, be with his daughter. Like, I don't know if she knows how, because I think they talked while I think he might have brought it up of like, they talked while he was in prison. So like, they have some relationship. It's not like they have zero relationship. It seems like there is a pre-established relationship, but I wonder, does she know that he has a tumor and he has such limited time? So, but now he's able to kind of put the past to bed and get to kind of move on with his life to the future, which I think is kind of beautiful. So there's a silver lining to what is, in my mind, like a really tragic tale all around. But another interesting element to this episode is that Luke decides that we need extra manpower around the office, especially if Susan's not coming back. So he ends up hiring Lomax, which I looked it up. The actress who plays Lomax, her name's Elena Juatco. I'm butchering her last name. I'm so sorry. But I also just wanted to Google results was, who played Ruth in Schitt's Creek? And I was like, wait, was she in? And yeah. So I haven't seen Schitt's Creek, but I know Tim was in it, and I know Susan Levy was in it as well. So it's just like, another person. Like, I don't know, like, how often her character might have popped up or whatever, whether it was like a recurring role, was it just like a every once in a while role or just a one-off role. So it's just interesting to know, like, there's probably been a lot more Schitt's Creek alumni in this, or people associated with the show in some capacity in this, that I just don't know, because I haven't watched the show. I've heard nothing but good things about it. It's just like, I just haven't taken a deep dive yet. But either way, Lomax is kind of interesting. Her shtick is whenever people lie to her, her nose itches, which I thought was interesting. But her and the Roman agency have a history, because she was kind of working for a competitor in the past and kind of ended up snaking like a sale from them. But now she's kind of working at her parents' like funeral home, and that's kind of the role she kind of plays. So it's interesting because like you could definitely tell, like, I feel like you could draw some parallels between her and Susan, but also like obviously like the stark differences. I even like that, like, you could tell like Zoe did not like her in the beginning. To be fair, once again, she didn't like Susan at the beginning either. Look where their relationship is. But it's like, but she also likes Zoe because she's like, oh yeah, Zoe lies with style. Because Zoe's like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you, and then her nose was itching. But yeah, she jumped at the opportunity. She knows the rumors about like the Roman agency. but no one knows the real stuff until like they get into the weeds, because she was there to hear Morris's story, and it's like, well, the entire time her nose wasn't itching. So I was like, okay, he's not lying, but she's probably thinking like, well, at least he believes that. But then Luke's explaining, she's like, wait, this is real? It's like, yeah, that's kind of what we do. Which she ends up dealing with her own adventure this episode. She meets a woman named Elsa, because this business is trying to buy up this like apartment complex or whatever, and she's the one tenant who won't sell. And Elsa tries to talk to her, and she pulls out the knife and everything. I'm like, where's this gonna go? And she stabs herself. I was like, what? And it turns out she's immortal. She can't die. Because the moment she was like, yeah, all these photos, this way, because Lomax was like, oh yeah, this woman in these photos look a lot like you. And it's like, yeah, because it is her. And I was like, oh, so I can't die. It's like she's lived here for like 100 years. She'd even said like, oh yeah, the last time I went out was during the war. And Lomax was like, which one? She's like, yeah, take your pick. But she was like, the last time I went out, everyone was celebrating. And she was like, yeah, some guy kissed me in celebration. And I kind of panicked and went back inside. And I was like, whoa. I was like, is that supposed to imply that she's the lady from the iconic, I can't remember if that was I want to say it was World War II, but it might have been a World War I photo where like there's the iconic photo of the soldier. Like I think it wasn't like he dips and kisses a woman. Like it's a very iconic photo at the end of a war. I want to say it's World War II, but it might have been World War I. But it's a very iconic photo. I was like, was that supposed? Because like even Lomax almost had this look like, wait, what? Like that's why I'm like, is that supposed to be a nod to being like that was supposed to be her or something like that? Because she even says like, yeah, I've been around for 500 years. I've lived in this place for 100 years. So it seems like she's kind of got a little bit of a agoraphobia situation going on. She just doesn't feel comfortable. It's like, she could have her groceries brought to her and stuff like that. It's like the advancements of like, yeah, just like technology advancing. And now it's just, I think the world's kind of passed her by because she stayed inside for so long and like her last step outside just kind of scared her a lot. Like, oh, and panicked. And so for her, it's like she found comfortability here. She doesn't want to leave, but I thought it was really interesting where Lomax was coming from. It's like, right, any schmuck can die, but to really live, takes a lot of work. That is the thing. It's like, I mean, at the end of the day, death comes for us all. I mean, obviously not so much in her case, but it's like understandable. It's like she's lived for such a long time. She's watched the people, friends, children. Like, I mean, who knows how many children she's had over 500 years. Eventually you're going to go like, yeah, I don't want any more kids. I mean, 'cause God knows if like, maybe it was never like children of her own. Maybe she adopted children, or maybe she had children that were like kids that were around her that were like children to her. Because I'm about to say, like, if you had kids, they might have had kids, and that gender, like, you might have descendants like running around you have no idea about. But I don't know. I think it's interesting too because Lomax didn't tell. She kind of danced around it, but she didn't tell Luke about the immortality thing, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I do like that it does seem like at the end of the episode she's going back to see Elsa, because Elsa hasn't really talked to anyone. Like, Lomax is the first person she's really talked to since, like, probably forever. She's kind of shooed everyone away because the whole point was, hey, this company is giving you this exorbitant amount or trying to give you this exorbitant amount of money because they don't want the bad press of, hey, we're dragging an old lady and kicking her out of her place. Like, that's not going to help the public image. So that's why they're trying to give her this exorbitant amount of money, be like, take it. But legally, they'd be in the right to have the police come and drag her out. But obviously, like, optics-wise, it wouldn't do good for them. So I'm interested to kind of get some more time with Lomax and kind of learn more about her. I really like her personality, and I think there definitely seems to be like, I think an element of her and Zoe will probably like, not necessarily immediately hit it all, but I think there's going to be some connective through line. Like I said, she does like Zoe and like the way she lies. So the only person who knows about her thing is Luke. So that's going to be interesting when because she didn't call Zoe out when Zoe was like saying like, oh, it's a pleasure to meet you and stuff like that. So, but even them like locking eyes, I think it almost felt like maybe like a kindred spirit type of thing going on a little bit, like who's going to blink first type of thing. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. But also Elsa, I mean, it could just be like, right, she has someone she can talk to and someone, to connect with in that regard. So I doubt we're done with the Elsa storyline. It could just be a thing of, oh, she does eventually get a new place, but her constitution, her situation might eventually become story relevant. You just see her kind of pop up in the future, continuing. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, Lomax is only taking over temporarily, but maybe once Susan returns, she'll kind of find something else. Because Luke was even like, yeah, this will only be temporary, which I'm like, I don't know. I like Lomax so far, so I hope it is a thing of like, are we just going to keep the roster like this core group, or will they eventually expand? Because obviously they're completely unaware of Susan stuff. Speaking on Zoe, she ended up stopping by Susan's place, and she's telling Luke, like, right, it looks like the drapes are closed, and I've been getting these messages that do not sound like something Susan would say. I figured, like, the house or whatever that entity is has mimicked enough Susan that I was thinking at the time, I'm like, how are you going to handle that if someone shows up? Are you going to be able to mimic Susan's voice? Like, her just being like, go away, leave me alone. Like, would that be enough to drive anyone away? Who knows what it would have done if Zoe had kept going? But, because even Luke's like, how many times have you driven by? I'm like, has Zoe done that since Susan left? Has she driven by and just been like, oh, she's there, I don't want to bother her? Is this the first time she's actually gone up to the door and knocked and tried to get to Susan, or not? I'm curious. But obviously the voicemail being like, oh, the voicemail box is full. It most likely isn't, because the automated voice is the voice from the house. So it's like, it's probably lying. Trying to make it seem like, oh, you can't sit, like, no, so no one bothers trying to leave any more messages. It's like, maybe they did. But I mean, because once again, her mom's probably thinking something up. So eventually she's going to end up reaching out to Luke and them. I'm like, I haven't heard from Susan. And I talked about this a couple episodes ago. Like, yeah, like anyone's going to pick it up. Like, Zoe was picking up on it, but I think maybe, well, I don't know if it's going to come into play with like Lomax, considering like her thing about getting the itch when people lie. We'll see if that ends up like playing any story relevance in regards to any of the Susan stuff. We learned something really interesting about August in this episode, because when he was talking to Phil earlier and about Morris being like, oh yeah, like he has these prison tats, and Phil's like, what do you know about prison tats? He's like, a lot more than I'd like to. I'm like, what's the story behind that? I was like, are we not going to find out about that? But then I'm about to say, have you been to jail? I don't see that being the case. It turns out it's his brother. And he's just saying like, what happened is that his brother, he's like, my brother was smarter than me, and he just happened to be at the wrong intersection, being stopped by the wrong cop with the wrong person, with the wrong companion. Like, I think that person probably has something on them, or just this situation. The way he said it, there's multiple ways I feel like it could be interpreted, but I was like, he was like, had the wrong passenger with him, is how I took it. At first I was like, was he talking about the wrong got stopped by the wrong cop who had the wrong partner with him? That partner would have popped stuff off, or was it just like it might have been a drug situation? I don't know. Like, maybe the person that was with August's brother had drugs or whatever, but he went to jail for like 2 years. But he's like, the moment my brother came out, he wasn't the same brother I knew. He had become hardened, 2 years or not, even though that seems light, that can change you from who you were. You lose some of yourself. And even then, like, August talked about his brother basically 12 weeks later dying. Specifically, he's like, died quietly. I thought like maybe he grew old and just died quietly in that regard. It's like, no, he died by stabbing himself in the stomach. It's like, Jesus. I was like, that's dark and that's sad. I was like, damn. And even later on, you see, like, I think August was staring at photos of Morris's tattoos, and I think it brought up a lot of stuff about his brother. I was like, damn. Obviously, we're learning quite a bit about August this season, because obviously we had this episode. We had what was episode 5. We dived into some of August's past and stuff like that. The whole him and Rochelle of it all. So really, really, really interesting stuff we're kind of learning about August this season. So, and speaking of Phil, we also had an update with him and Anthony. It's kind of seemed like it might have been like a, oh God, this doesn't look good type of situation, because it's like, oh, like emergency room, but it turns out they finally have a baby. I guess the adoption agency kind of came through. They were just waiting, and I guess they were waiting for a baby to become available, and this mother, I guess, gave birth, and they are kind of next on the list, and so they're able to bring a child home. So that's kind of neat, especially after the last episode, everything between Phil and his sister, and then you add in this now happening. I was like, that's actually really, really dope. So I'm interested to see where things kind of go on that front as well. and how that kind of potentially changes things for Phil and Anthony, or will things stay exactly the same? Like what, being parents now, how does that change everything at the Roman agency for them, especially just kind of where the workload being what it is? Well, so we'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.